Hi everyone, in this video I'm providing a quick tutorial about the thesis and significance writing assignment, and I have the model on the screen with me. This is one of the more complex aspects of producing a historical analysis of a primary source. It's one of the most difficult, and that's because it requires you to think about this source in the context of the historical topic that it relates to as a whole. And so the thesis statement is supposed to provide an outline of your argument, both about that source in particular and why that source is important for understanding the overall historical period. Significant section of your paper, the last section of your paper, should outline, in addition to that, a little more about the broader context of why the source is important. Why is this source important for understanding this particular period? What does it tell you about what this period more broadly was like? The values, ideals, goals of this period. Now, there are two main weaknesses that I often see in students who are working on this assignment. And I'm starting with the thesis section. And the two are obviously tied pretty closely together. But to begin with, the thesis statement, typically model thesis statements or thesis statements produced as part of an assignment or as a paper by students at an introductory survey level are either too descriptive or are imprecise. If it's too descriptive, that means that it's not extrapolating from the source. It's only describing what's going on in the source. That's good, that's important, but for the thesis statement, we want to be able to broaden that a little more. We want to be able to say, given that this is going on in the source, I can make an argument about something broader about what we can know about the society or the time period that produced the source. If a thesis statement is imprecise, generally it only talks about the broader context and doesn't tie the context back to the source. And so you must remember that at the end of the day, the source is your foundation, and you must look at the period from the source because the source is your evidence. It's a primary source. It's the best possible evidence that you can have to talk about this period at this time. And so you have to begin with the source. You have to recognize what the source says, what arguments the source is making, what are the themes that are present in the source, and then move from that to an argument about what the general historical period was like. You don't want to do it in reverse. I know that the period of ancient Rome and the ancient Roman Empire was like this, and I can find it in this source. That's the wrong way around to do it. We want to be able to say, here's what's going on in the source, therefore we can imagine that ancient Roman society was like this. See how it's a slightly different approach. Okay, now to the assignment itself. First, I've provided you with a model thesis and a model statement of significance here. What does the thesis do? It names the source. It begins with the source. Always name the source and begin with the source. Rome, after the Punic Wars by Polybius, shows that the Romans attempted to establish a system of checks and balances within their system of government. So it's based on the source. It's based on what the author of this thesis found within the source. And then he goes on. He or she goes on and says, revealing what about Roman society? That Roman society was most concerned to avoid internal conflicts and maintain the unity of their citizens. So he's making an argument about what Roman society was like based on what they've discovered in the source. And now the significance section, which draws out this part of the thesis statement in more detail. Rome after the Punic Wars is an in-depth examination of Roman government, so kind of a check back to this second clause, first of all, the way in which Romans attempted to protect the integrity of their society. They established checks and balances, fostered cultural practices, encouraged citizens to sacrifice themselves for the good of the Republic. So it's starting to tell you more about what Roman society was like. It's a society based on dedication to the common good, resisting selfishness, and that's something that's a little broader than just the source itself. So that's kind of what we're aiming for. Now, of course, in your papers, I expect your significant statements to be significantly longer than this. They should be at least half a page. But for this assignment, short paragraph like this, about 3 sentences, that'll be just fine. So that's the first part of the assignment. Look at the model thesis and significance statement. The second part is a series of multiple choice questions. I've given you sample thesis statements, thesis sentences. And then what I want you to do is to decide whether they are too descriptive or too imprecise. I have picked these because they are faulty thesis statements. So these are examples of what not to do. But your task is to determine what they've done wrong or where they could be improved. And then lastly, building off seeing the model, seeing the good standard, seeing the weaker examples, I want you to construct your own thesis statement and your own significance statement on the source, the Sermon on the Mount. So not on the Polybius source, that's just an example that I'm providing here, but on the Sermon on the Mount that we're reading this week. Hope this is helpful. Good luck on the assignment.